All right, good morning, Cornerstone Leads. March has just been a whirlwind. I'm getting this training in by the skin of my teeth on the last day of March. 3 birthdays in our family and a trip to Arizona for baseball really made the month fly by. So this is our second to last training, and for April, so tomorrow's the 1st on a Saturday, and we do not have school next Friday, and then they have the whole next week off for spring break. So April is going to go even faster than March. So I would really encourage you guys to get your times down with your teachers, plan those lessons, and get in with the kids when you can. So once again, so thankful for all of you for your hard work in this. You guys have been so creative, and I cannot believe that after this we only have one more book. So way to hang in there. And again, the books were released for next year, and I'm hoping that I will see many of you come back as Project Cornerstone helpers. It makes a big difference. So excuse me. This month's book is Enemy Pie, and what this is tackling is a few items per usual. The first one being, do not judge a book by its cover. That, sometimes we make assumptions just by looking at someone or not really getting to know them, and that can hurt us and other people along the way. And this kind of teaches kids how to build a friendship with someone that maybe they wouldn't realistically be friends with, had they just given that judgment of a person right off the bat. So this is actually a really cute story, and I actually found there's quite a bit of cute things, some of which I posted on the Facebook page from Teachers Pay Teachers. And again, I'm always looking for bulletin board ideas, especially from classes who have not contributed to a bulletin board yet. So let's dive into our book, Enemy Pie. It should have been a perfect summer. My dad helped me build a treehouse in our backyard. My sister was at camp for 3 whole weeks, and I was on the best baseball team in town. It should have been a perfect summer, but it wasn't. It was all good until Jeremy Ross moved into the neighborhood right next door to my best friend Stanley. I did not like Jeremy Ross. He laughed at me when he struck me out in a baseball game. He had a party on his trampoline, and I wasn't even invited. But my best friend Stanley was. Jeremy Ross was the one and only person on my enemy list. I never even had an enemy list until he moved into the neighborhood. But as soon as he came along, I needed one. I hung it up in my treehouse where Jeremy Ross was not allowed to go. Dad understood stuff like enemies. He told me that when he was my age, he had enemies too, but he knew of a way to get rid of them. I asked him to tell me how. Tell you how? I'll show you how, he said. He pulled out a really old recipe book off the kitchen shelf. Inside there was a worn-out scrap of paper with faded writing. Dad held it up and squinted at it. Enemy Pie, he said, satisfied. You may be wondering what exactly is an enemy pie. I was wondering too, but Dad said the recipe was so secret he couldn't even tell me. I decided it must be magic. I begged him to tell me something, anything. I will tell you this, he said. Enemy pie is the fastest known way to get rid of enemies. Now, of course, this got my mind working. What kinds of things? Disgusting things? Would I put into a pie for an enemy? I brought Dad some weeds from the garden, but he just shook his head. I brought him earthworms and rocks, but he didn't think he'd need those. I gave him the gum I'd been chewing on all morning. He gave it right back to me. I went out to play alone. I shot baskets until the ball got stuck on the roof. I threw a boomerang that never came back to me. And all the while I listened to the sounds of my dad chopping and stirring and blending the ingredients of enemy pie. This could be a great summer after all. Enemy pie was going to be awful. I tried to imagine how horrible it must smell, or worse yet, what it would look like. But when I was in the backyard looking for ladybugs, I smelled something really, really, really good. And as far as I could tell, it was coming from our kitchen. I was a bit confused. I went in to ask Dad what was wrong. Enemy pie shouldn't smell this good, but Dad was smart. If enemy pie smelled bad, your enemy would never eat it, he said. I could tell he'd made enemy pie before. The buzzer rang, and Dad put it on the oven mitts and pulled the pie out of the oven. It looked like plain old pie. It looked good enough to eat. I was catching on, but still, I wasn't really sure how this enemy pie worked. What exactly did it do to enemies? Maybe it made their hair fall out or their breath stinky. Maybe it made bullies cry. I asked Dad, but he was no help. He wouldn't tell me a thing. But while the pie cooled, he filled me in on my job. He talked quietly. There is one part of enemy pie that I can't do. In order for it to work, you need to spend a day with your enemy. Even worse, you have to be nice to him. It's not easy, but that's the only way that enemy pie can work. Are you sure you want to go through with this? Of course I was. It sounded horrible. It was scary, but it was worth a try. All I had to do was spend one day with Jeremy Ross. Then he'd be out of my hair for the rest of my life. I rode my bike to his house and knocked on the door. When Jeremy opened the door, he seemed surprised. He stood on the other side of the screen door and looked at me, waiting for me to say something. I was nervous. Can you play? I asked. He looked confused. I'll go ask my mom, he said. He came back with his shoes in his hand. His mom walked around the corner to say hello. You boys stay out of trouble, she said, smiling. We rode bikes for a while and played on the trampoline. Then we made some water balloons and threw them at the neighbor girls, but we missed. Jeremy's mom made us lunch. After lunch, we went over to my house. It was strange, but I was kind of having fun with my enemy. He almost seemed nice, but of course I couldn't tell Dad that since he had worked too hard to make this enemy pie. Jeremy Ross liked my basketball hoop. He said he wished he had a basketball hoop, but they didn't have room for one. I let him win a game, just to be nice. Jeremy Ross knew how to throw a boomerang. He threw it and it came right back to him. I threw it and it went over my house and into the backyard. When we climbed over the fence to find it, the first thing Jeremy noticed was my tree house. My treehouse was my treehouse. I was the boss. If my sister wanted in, I didn't have to let her. If my dad wanted in, I didn't have to let him. And if Jeremy wanted in, can we go in it? He asked. I knew he was going to ask me that, but he was the top person, the only person on my enemy list, and enemies aren't allowed in my treehouse. But he did teach me to throw a boomerang. And he did have me over for lunch, and he did let me play on his trampoline. He wasn't being a very good enemy. Okay, I said, but hold on. I climbed up ahead of him and tore the enemy list off the wall. I had a checkerboard and some cards in the treehouse, and we played games until my dad... Gosh, sorry guys. Friendly helper there. I had a checkerboard and some cards in the treehouse, and we played games until my dad called us down for dinner. We pretended we didn't hear him, and when he came out to get us, we tried to hide from him, but somehow he found us. Dad made us macaroni and cheese for dinner, my favorite. It was Jeremy's favorite too. Maybe Jeremy Ross wasn't so bad after all. I was beginning to think that maybe we should just forget about enemy pie. But sure enough, after dinner, Dad brought out the pie. I watched as he cut the pie into 8 thick slices. Dad, I said, it sure is nice having a new friend in the neighborhood. I was trying to get his attention and trying to tell him that Jeremy Ross was no longer my enemy. But Dad only smiled and nodded. I think he thought I was just pretending. Dad dished up 3 plates side by side with big pieces of pie and giant scoops of ice cream. He passed one to me and one to Jeremy. Wow, Jeremy said, looking at the pie. My dad never makes pie like this. It was at this point that I panicked. I didn't want Jeremy to eat enemy pie. He was my friend. I couldn't let him eat it. Jeremy, don't eat it. It's bad pie. I think it's poisonous or something. Jeremy's fork stopped. Before reaching his mouth, he crumpled his eyebrows and looked at me funny. I felt relieved. I had saved his life. I was a hero. If it's so bad, Jeremy asked, then why has your dad already eaten half of it? I turned to look at my dad. Sure enough, he was eating enemy pie. Good stuff, he mumbled through a mouthful, and that was all he said. I sat there watching them eat enemy pie for a few seconds. Dad was laughing. Jeremy was happily eating, and neither of them was losing any hair. It seemed safe enough. I took a tiny taste. Enemy pie was delicious. After dessert, Jeremy rode his bike home, but not before inviting me over to play on his trampoline in the morning. He said he'd teach me how to flip. As for enemy pie, I still don't know how to make it. I still wonder if enemies really do hate it, or if their hair falls out, or if their breath turns bad. But I don't know if I'll ever get an answer because I just lost my best enemy. Okay, so hopefully between my heater and my friendly helper cat, you guys were able to hear that. And once again, there's a few approaches to take on this. So there's some really cute crafts and kind of ingredient cards that I posted on the Facebook page. And really the idea is to use all the ingredients that make a good friend. You know, a friend is kind, a friend shares, a friend, you know, have the kids really think of their ideas of what a good friend includes. And so for my younger kids, one thing you can do is get those big papers that we have in the Cornerstone area and draw a pie. And then you can have the kids take turns kind of calling out things that, you know, make a good friend. And you can leave the whole paper with the teacher afterwards. If you're really ambitious, for my middle grades, there is a way to make like a cute little cherry pie. And then the kids, so they can do the pie, and then the kids can write on there like traits of a good friend. And then you have all these adorable little pies, which would, if anyone decides to do, I would love to have as a bulletin board. For our upper grades, a really cute idea that I saw was actually having them make posters. And for this, I would get paper that's a little bit bigger than your traditional 8.5 by 11, and have them do their best, like, copy of the cover of this book. And then all around it, they write words of what, you know, can make a good friend. So those also, if there's a class that has not had a chance to be on a bulletin board, I would love those as well. Our kids are very creative and they seem to come up with a lot of cool stuff. So let's see what else they can. There is a part of this that does talk about like what a genuine apology looks like. And that might be something to do with our younger kids, you know, like saying sorry is good. But to be really, truly sorry what does that mean? You know, sometimes kids just go through the motions and, sorry, I have chatty cats today. Sometimes they just go through the motions and say sorry because that's what's expected of them. But to really be sorry, you know, first you have to feel, you know, the emotions, recognize that there's some little bookmarkers in there that kind of teach the kids, you know, the steps to a genuine apology. And of course, with an apology, that kind of means, you know, we're not going to do that again. So, I've uploaded the lesson plan for you guys, with some other questions and, project ideas for you to do. And, yeah, I would just really, invite, class friendship chain. Cut pieces of 9 by 12 inch construction paper into 4 vertical strips to use as links on the chain. Okay, this is like kind of continuing on. It's like ask them to write on the chain when they see someone being a bucket filler, then they can add to the chain. That's a really cute idea to continue that bucket filling dialogue. So again, I apologize for kind of being all over the place today, but I would love to see your ideas on the Facebook page. I think it spurs others' creativity. Again, some of you have done an amazing job creating your own projects, and I'm just so thankful for you guys and the time that you've been willing to give. So keep up the good work, and I will see you next month for our final lesson. Bye.